Let's start off with the start quarterbacks and Jordan Love, and I get it. He's coming off a stinker last week. 11 fantasy points against Cleveland, but I mean, it's really hard to ignore this week's matchup against the Cowboys. No defense has given up more fantasy points to quarterbacks over the first 3 weeks. In fact, Jalen Hurts, Russell Wilson, who just got benched, and Caleb Williams have all scored more than 24 points against Dallas. So start Jordan Love and start Caleb Williams. If you look, he is the third best quarterback in fantasy football right now after 3 weeks. And I like him this week against Las Vegas. It's a plus matchup against the Raiders. Their defense has allowed 2 quarterbacks to beat them for over 18 points in the first 3 weeks. So continue to start Caleb Williams. Speaking of quarterbacks that you should sit, Dak Prescott is on this list. Last week, he was a major disappointment. Only 12 points against the Bears. I mean, part of it was that he lost CeeDee Lamb, but he has now been held to fewer than 13 points in 2 of his first 3 games. And Green Bay's defense is one of the toughest in the league. And if you don't think Micah Parsons is going to be looking to sack Dak often, that's going to happen in this one. I also would fade Trevor Lawrence. Now, I told you not to play him last week. He had fewer than 8 points. This week, he's got the Niners. Their defense has allowed 13.8 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks this year. And visiting quarterbacks have averaged just 14.9 points against them in their last 10 games. So Trevor Lawrence is a fade for me among the quarterbacks. At running back, I'm starting Jordan Mason again. He was on this list last week. He had 2 touchdowns and nearly 24 fantasy points. Now he's got the Steelers. Their defense has allowed 2 running backs to beat them for over 16 points in their first 3 games. The Steelers defense is not as good as we thought it was. Start Jordan Mason and start J.K. Dobbins. I mean, he's been solid in his first 3 games with the Broncos, averaging over 5 yards per carry. He scored a combined 45.6 fantasy points. And he's got the Bengals this week, who just got smoked by the aforementioned Jordan Mason for a couple of touchdowns. They've also allowed 4 running backs to beat them for over 15 fantasy points in 3 games. So J.K. Dobbins is a very nice RB2 this week. Among the backs that I'm fading, well, let's start off with DeAndre Swift. Now, he's getting a lot of touches in Chicago's offense, but he's averaging just 3.6 yards per rush. That is not good. And the Raiders defense, I've been saying it all season, sneaky tough against running backs. They've allowed 1 opposing runner to score more than 14.5 points against them since week 12 of last year. So Swift is a flex at best. And the same goes for Jacory Croskett-Merritt, another player I told you not to play last week. And not only did he not start, but he only played 23 snaps in week 3. And that's a problem. Now, he did get into the end zone, but he still scored just 10 points and he averages 3.3 yards per rush. I am fading him. Why? Well, because this backfield is very confusing, and Atlanta's defense has allowed the 6th fewest points to running backs. At wide receiver, I am starting Emeka Egbuka. He's been fabulous in his first 3 games in the NFL, scoring a combined 51 fantasy points on 21 combined targets. And keep in mind, Mike Evans is banged up. Chris Godwin is banged up, which means Egbuka is going to see a lot of targets against the Eagles. Their defense has allowed 13 plus points to 4 receivers, including 2 who have gone over 18 points. So start Emeka Egbuka and start Courtland Sutton. In 2 of his first 3 games this year, he's put up 18 or more points. He's been very good. Last week, almost 24 points. This week, he's got a very good matchup against the Bengals, who've given up 11 plus points to 5 wide receivers, including 2 who've gone over 16 this season. Courtland Sutton is a very nice flex option for fantasy managers. Guys, it's gotten to this point with Brian Thomas Jr. Listen, I hope I can reverse jinx him back into fantasy relevancy, but I mean, he's 54th in points among wide receivers. His catch rate is 28%. I mean, that's absolutely terrible. And the Niners have been tough on wide receivers, so not only is BTJ a risk, but so is Travis Hunter at this point. I'm also going to fade DK Metcalf. Now, I liked him last week. He did score a touchdown, but his fantasy production has not been great. He's averaging right around 12 points per game. I just don't love this overseas matchup against the Vikings. They've allowed the fewest fantasy points to opposing perimeter receivers this season, so beware DK Metcalf. Moving on to the tight ends and Jake Ferguson. I told you to play him last week. He had a huge game, 13 catches, over 21 fantasy points. He's now seen a combined 32 targets in the first 3 weeks. And with CeeDee Lamb out, Dak Prescott's going to target him a lot. The Packers have also allowed the 3rd most yards to tight ends after 3 weeks. I'd also start Dalton Kincaid against the Saints. Maybe this is the year Kincaid finally breaks out. He scored 14 plus points in 2 of his first 3 games. Last week, he had nearly 18 points against the Dolphins. And the Saints, well, their defense is pretty vulnerable. So I think Kincaid is a very nice play. The tight ends that I would sit, and this one might surprise you, but it's Mark Andrews. And last week, I get it. He went off 2 touchdowns, over 27 fantasy points. But beware this matchup against Kansas City. Their defense has allowed the 3rd fewest points of tight ends this year, and Andrews has done nothing against them historically. In fact, he's averaging 4.8 fantasy points in 5 career regular season games against the Chiefs. And I'm also benching Dalton Schultz. He had 8.9 points last week. It's not great, but he's failed to score double digits now in all but one of his last 20 games. And this week, he's got the Titans. They have held Schultz to single digits in 5 of career meetings, including each of the last 4 in a row. So Dalton Schultz is a fade.